So let's go ahead and jump into this DEprogram tonight. I've got so much work put into this. Part of me says, I was talking with Tanhawk the other night, and he helped just firm up my realization that this work that I do here on YouTube and etc., this isn't something I do. This is who I am. And, that's why I have to continue to do it. Even though I'm not monetized, even though I have to work, I'm still going to keep doing it. And that's why I bring it to you. It's a passion. This is stuff that only I put out. I'm often imitated, but I'm never duplicated. And you can't get this anywhere else. Yes, get back to our beat, says Carmen. And there's Tanhawk right on cue. This is what I am. This is my mission. I'm not a click guy. I'm not a view guy, although I want those because it means my mission is being completed. That means I'm here to preach the gospel to all creatures. Gospel's a heathen word. It means the good news of the victories of the heathen. Evangelize is a heathen word. It means to spread the good news of the heathens to all people. And that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm doing. And I'm not slowing down. I'm picking up, and I'm telling you, our best days are ahead of us. So let's get into this whole thing about the millennium and what's going on with that. It comes out of Revelation 20. I'm not going to read this because it's right there on the screen. I'm just the mailman, and I can't stop being a mailman. You're right, Kylie. I'll bring you the mail. Whether you read it or not is up to you. And I used to worry, oh my gosh, are they going to read their mail? There's a check in there. Are they going to read their mail? There's a bill in there. Are they not going to get their power? Sorry, I'm just delivering the mail because in the time I worry about you, I can deliver the mail to somebody that might be willing to receive it. So we're coming out of Revelation 20 tonight. And we're going to
hear something really fascinating?
Sure. It's all fake. I think everything has been falsified before the year 1600. If you look on very, very old maps, you see that there used to be a country called Tartaria that was in existence. And at a certain point, all of history has been changed. About 1,000 years have been added to the timeline in order to justify land claims. And those land claims largely have to do with the Eurasian horde and the elimination of the Eurasian horde. Rome and Greece and Egypt were actually active till around 1600, and that Rome actually fell around 1600. So,
as opposed to what's the conventional timeline?
About 1,000 years before. If you can wrap your head around it, the Salem witch trials took place around the same time as the Inquisition. Columbus was discovering America around the time Rome fell. All of this was designed to erase this entire civilization from history.
And the real takeaway there, other than I've been saying this for years, but I can't get on Joe Rogan. Could it be that even the disclosure of Tartaria, which is great stuff, and as soon as I know enough about it, I'll talk about it. I'm building a file. But could it be that even the great Tartarian disclosure is at least to some degree leveraged by the Abrahamics, triple X for porn, and also for proto, second wave, and third wave Abrahamics? Has even Tartaria knowledge been leveraged by the cabal to occult an even deeper truth? The answer is yes, and that's the deeper truth we're going to get to tonight. Because this idea that 1,000 years has been added to history, it's a family really of historical revision theories. It's not just one single hypothesis. It's got a lot of different versions, and we're going to give you an overview tonight of the main ideas. The first guy that really weighed into this, not really the first guy, but one of the more prominent ones, was a guy named Heribert Illig. He was born in Bavaria, one of our people, and he was also an associate of Velikovsky. Some of you know that name. What's FAF mean? I don't know what that means. His proposals received coverage in the German media in the 1990s, and he said basically from 6/14 to 9/11, interesting number, it never happened. And that European history was artificially extended by about 300 years. So he says that we should be living today in 1729 and not 2026. We really are living in about We're really living in about 1026, but he's got a little bit of a variation on it. But it's really, we're living in the 1700s, not the 2000s. And some of the big things that we're going to hit tonight is Illig hit on something that I thought only I had hit on. Charlemagne. Charlemagne was either completely made up, like the Jesus character, or he's been greatly exaggerated. Most of the medieval documents, like the King James Version, are forged, and the calendar has been manipulated by the Pope so that they could have themselves in power in the year 1000, which they thought was going to be the second coming of the Jesus character. And this is why the Abrahamics are so obsessed with this 1,000 years and this millennium idea. Boom. It's really, really interesting stuff. Now, Charlemagne, let's talk about Charlemagne. He occupies a really fascinating place in history, and specifically in the formation of the Judeo-Christian matrix, because he really stands right at the cross, if you will, the crossroads of Christian history. And he stands at the intersection of politics, theology, empires, education, and the development of Western Christianity. And whether you see him as a saintly ruler, whether you see him as an ambitious emperor or something in between, the influence of Charlemagne on the modern Christian worldview, well, it really can't even been overstated. Tanhawk making a good point about the calendar in the chat. Check it out. So who was Charlemagne? Well, he was the king of the Franks, and he came to power, son of a gun, on Christmas Day in the year 800, which is another interesting number, 8. And he was crowned by the Pope Leo III in Rome. And that single event is the defining moment of Western civilization. A Christian emperor had been crowned. God himself now governed the nations through a partnership between church and empire. And that idea still echoes today in our society. And Christianity, as you know it today, was created by Charlemagne. Before Charlemagne, Christianity was just another religion, a tiny, insignificant desert religion, I'll be nice, among many kingdoms. It was spread out everywhere, but just hardly even worth a mention. But after Charlemagne, Western Europe came to view itself as one big Christian civilization. And that's where we get the word Christendom from. It sounds just like Charlie Kirk. It sounds just like J.D. Vance. It sounds just like Donald Trump. It sounds just like Stu Peters. It sounds just like all of these other Peters, that Christian rulers should be in charge, and rulers should defend Christianity. Government should be Christian. Christianity should shape our law. Society should be Christian. So everybody wants to get all upset about Noahide laws, even though those are all in the 10 Commandments. Everybody wants to get all upset about Sharia law. And I'm not saying that these things are good, but nobody has a problem when everybody says that society should be Christian. There's a lot of people, too, that said that they were in concentration camps, too. So just because somebody says it doesn't mean that it's really true. And modern Christians still advocate this today. Your MAGAs, your nationalists, your Christian identityists. Yes, they all, and we see strong emotions coming out. He fought the Muslims. It'd be pretty hard for Charlemagne to fight the Muslims if he wasn't real. But with Charlemagne, whether he was real or fake, Christianity through Charlemagne became tied to political power and imperial power and government power. Before Charlemagne, Christianity was a pimple in the butt crack of humanity. After Charlemagne, we had state churches, royal bishops, You had to pay your tithes, forced conversions, either convert or die. And resistance to conversion was punished by death. And Christianity spread only through the threat of violence. And we'll talk about Dracula tonight, I think. So, the true story, this is the true story of how the world became Christian, and it has been occulted and hidden. I want to kind of redeem that word occulted. A lot of you, flinch when I say occult. It just means hidden. This is what the Christian matrix is trying to occult today. The modern Christians still advocate this. MAGA, Q, nationalist, Christian identity. They don't want us to know the truth. And as Divine Heathen says, they are trying to hide the divine spark within us. Also, people don't know, but the Charlemagne character actually was almost as important as King James in the transmission of the Bible as we know it today. Charlemagne launched what's called the Carolingian Renaissance. They copied down a bunch of Bible manuscripts, threw out the ones they didn't like. They preserved Christian literature while destroying all heathen literature. They standardized the Latin language as the holy language. They're the first ones to establish compulsory schools. And look what they've done for us. And they made sure that all the priests could write, but that all the people couldn't. And without this Carolingian Renaissance, the Bible as we know it, all of the Christian literature that we still have, it would have been lost. Just like the heathen works and the heathen peoples that they systematically eradicated. And this is what's behind the MAGA movement. This is what's behind the Q movement. This is what's behind the Christian nationalist movement. This is what's behind the Christian identity movement. Oh, but Charlie Kirk, he was behind this and he wanted to rule over you. Charlie Kirk was the Christian Osama bin Laden. They both were probably straw men, puppet figures. So, the bottom line on this is that the modern church owes all to Charlemagne, everything to Charlemagne. The institutional features of Western Catholicism developed or were strengthened under the rule of Charlemagne, and everything that's Protestant today came out of Catholicism. Strong papal authority or strong preacher authority, cooperation between the church and state, prayer in schools, 10 commandments on the walls, standardized worship, even education. The first mandated public schools were Abrahamics. And without Charlemagne, the Christian Abrahamics church would have ceased to exist. Without Charlemagne, who probably wasn't even a real person, just like Jesus. This is groundbreaking information tonight. You got to get this. And why does he matter? Just like Charlemagne the God that Tanhawk says, the manifest stooge, Charlemagne the God. Based on the themes that we've explored together, the Josephus work, the Testimonium Flavianum that we're going to talk about, pre-terrorism that we're going to talk about, the development of Christian doctrine, and the possibility that key elements of Christianity weren't divinely inspired, but they developed over time. Charlemagne is the central figure in Christianity's development. You had this Jesus character who preached this movement. Then you had the Paul character who spread it throughout the Roman world. And then here comes Charlemagne to transform religious tradition into the cultural and political framework of Western Europe. And the funny thing is that none of them, Jesus, Paul, Charlemagne, none of them were likely even real historical persons. And here's an interesting connection to the phantom time and to the millennium. We're discussing the idea that 1,000 years has been added to history. Charlemagne becomes central in this because his proponents argue that Charlemagne himself, and they're right, or Charlemagne the character, invented and was exaggerated, he himself, along with Jesus and Paul, to anchor these fabricated centuries. We know that those years were there because it's all about Jesus and Charlemagne. So whether you want to view Charlemagne as an actual emperor or a symbolic figure, he still sits in the pivotal post-biblical point in the story of how Western Christian civilization came to be and came to be what it is. And for someone like me who tries to examine how religious ideas became embedded in institutions in our culture, Charlemagne is one of three fake characters with Jesus and Paul responsible for shaping the Abrahamics world matrix that we are living under today. And then we get to Charlemagne and the little season, the millennium and the little season. This is where history and theology and even a little bit of speculation intersect. And there's several ways that people have connected Charlemagne to the 1,000 years of Revelation. The timing itself is really striking because Charlemagne was crowned emperor supposedly in 800 AD. That's really close to 1,000 AD. And in history, if the history of the entire world was written, the American Revolution would be on the second sentence of the last paragraph. So 200 years in history is nothing. And the biblical millennium in the book of Revelation is described, it's told to us that it's 1,000 years. So the first theory is that Charlemagne himself kicked off the millennium, whether he's a character or a person. The Christian empire itself, did it represent the manifestation of Jesus' reign? 1,000 years of Christian reign on planet Earth. Can we prove that? And if we could, wouldn't that be interesting? Some have suggested that the Christian empire itself is represented by the earthly manifestation of Charlemagne's reign. Jesus reigned through the church. The church partnered with Christian kings. The Christian emperor governs the nations. Therefore, through Charlemagne, Christ, Jesus, was ruling for 1,000 years, which is a millennium, if we view Charlemagne as an empirical representative of the Jesus character. Fascinating ideas that we are discovering. Charlemagne's supporters called him the new David. His supporters called him the new biblical king. Compared with King David, King Solomon, Constantine the Great, his propaganda was that he restored God's kingdom on earth, kind of like Trump is saying. So notice that pattern. In the Old Testament, you had David, Solomon, and the temple. In the Carolinian vision, you got Charlemagne, Christian empire, and Christian civilization. And folks, that parallel is on purpose. It's intentional. So Revelation became institutional rather than just scripted prophecy. And that's one of the most intriguing historical observations, because before Charlemagne showed up, whether real or fake, everybody expected Jesus to return and for him to set up his kingdom and for persecution to continue. But after Charlemagne, the emphasis decided, kind of shifted to, let's take over this world for Jesus. Christ is king. All of a sudden, we had Christian law, Christian schools, Christian kings, and Christian empires. Put these dots together, connect these dots. Now, the preterists, and I'll tell you what that means in a second, they say that most of the book of Revelation was fulfilled in the first century, most of it specifically around the fall of Jerusalem. Well, look at that. And it was then that Christianity, after that, was transformed into an imperial institution. And Charlemagne represents the high water mark, the milestone in that transformation. And it's my opinion, and I'm presenting you the evidence, and you can see whatever you want to see, that Charlemagne is the occulted or hidden fulfillment of the book of Revelation itself. It was the emergence of a powerful Christian empire disclosing the essential nature of Abrahamic's scripted prophecy, scripted prophecy. It's not biblical prophecy. It's just scripted prophecy. And we have to give the devil his due. They know how to work their plan after planning their work. They know how to plan the work and work the plan. And this is also worth noting before we move on. Charlemagne's coronation, I'm going to say it was in 1000 AD. It gave Western Europe a powerful narrative that history itself had entered a Christian age. And that role as the ruler who inaugurated the Christian millennium is one reason he continues to appear in discussions about the biblical millennium and the little season that follows it. We're going to get bang on to that tonight. Some of you know of Anatoly Fomenko. I've got his books up here. I've taught on it in the past. He said that all ancient history before about 1000 AD was duplicated or fabricated, which also just happens to coincide with when Charlemagne came on the scene. The Roman Empire, ancient Egypt, Greece, biblical events, they all occurred much, much later than traditionally believed, and maybe not even in the Middle East. I'm trying to get old Florida on to talk about that. I'm going to have to do it without him. And Fomenko says that human history as we know it, only about 1,000 years long. That ties in very neatly with Charlemagne as the millennium, and it ties in very neatly with the Abrahamic narrative. Fomenko argued that medieval scribes just copy the same events under different names, creating illusion of more time. They just identified various rulers from different civilizations as being the same historical person, recorded many different times. They just changed the names. And we know they've been doing this forever. Why does it surprise us? It doesn't surprise me in the least. So what we really have are rewritten and really pre-written chronologies. We have forged manuscripts, including the King James Version. We've got made-up dynasties. We've got invented empires. And we've got duplicated historical figures. And we have the eradication of non-Christian information from our great heathen folk and kin. Very few documents survive from some centuries. That's because the centuries weren't there. It's the same way as we can't prove that Jesus was a real historical person. Oh, we just lost the information. Or maybe it was just never there. Repeated royal names, reoccurring wars and legends, similarities between different civilizations. And these observations are real phenomena that real historians actually study. But mainstream scholarship, which aligns with the Christian narrative so they can get funding, explains that it's just political continuity and literary borrowing. You know what literary borrowing is? It's plagiarism, stealing, and lying. Like I said, I'm often imitated but never duplicated. And the uneven survival of records. None of the heathen records existed because the Christians destroyed them. And a lot of the records from a lot of these years don't exist because those years never existed. Let's talk about the Dark Ages for a minute. From about the 5th to the 10th centuries, which is 500 years if you're mathematically challenged, it's called the Dark Ages because there was nothing written down about it. It's almost like it never existed. Some say this is evidence of duplicated history. Duplicated history. Real historians, and whether you know it or not, all history as you know it comes down through either Jesuit or Proto-Abrahamic censorship. All history. Doesn't matter if it's Egyptian history, Sumerian history, all history comes down through two funnels, one Jesuit, one Proto-Abrahamic. I have proved this to you in the past. And then you have this idea of biblical chronology. We know that 95% of Christians don't read the Bible. And Bible chronology is put in there to throw us off the path again. And when you compare Bible chronology with what's called conventional chronology, which is made up too, then you're arguing about deck chairs on an intellectual Titanic. You're really arguing about whether they play harps in heaven or not when the place doesn't even really exist. And then you have all the fringe topics that they throw in to keep you from understanding the stuff that I'm talking about tonight. Tartaria, mud flood, reset, hidden civilizations, catastrophism, lost advanced civilizations. Those things are real, but all the real information about it, written by the real people that lived it, have been destroyed. And all that remains are the distractions that are thrown out there by the Abrahamic matrix. I'm asking you to consider this, which further gets us down the Tartaria rabbit hole, the mud flood rabbit hole, so we don't ever get to the real truth. Can you see how this helps occult everything? And still makes me the only guy, which is amazing on the internet, the only guy that really breaks down and exposes the Abrahamic matrix. It keeps us from noticing the obvious Charlemagne, Millennium, Jesus, Bible information. They're trying to throw us off the scent, and they're doing a really, really good job. Yes, there's gaps. Yes, there's conflicting chronology. It's filled with legendary figures like Charlemagne, Jesus, Paul, forged documents. We know even parts of the Bible are forged. The destroyed heathen documents, rewriting of history. Yes, I'm delivering the mail, Jessica. And it's true that rulers and institutions have altered records, destroyed texts, and produced propaganda. And the key point is scale. How big is it? Mainstream historians even admit that extensive falsification and lack of evidence exists, but they won't go all the way to saying 1,000 years has been inserted in history. Tonight, I'm not going to say it. I'm going to prove it. I'm going to prove it. We know the dates are off by as much as centuries. We know that rulers and events have been duplicated in what's called accepted history. Medieval forgeries, fabricated characters, saintly legends, those are all well documented. And in my work over now almost 15 years, we've documented that even the Bible is a medieval forgery and fabrication. These possibilities are there. And I think we can prove compellingly that 1,000 years of world history were made up and fabricated. And like Divine Heathen says, if they hadn't destroyed all the heathen records, we wouldn't be having these stupid discussions, because we would have the real records, we would have the real time, and we'd be able to pull our people out of this fear and guilt, blood magic, Abrahamics, mind control, matrix, and mind virus. We'd be able to do it. So at least 1,000 years are a lie. And maybe more. And maybe more. If you put a question into the chat in all caps, and it looks like a good question, I'll open up the phone lines. But you got to put it in the chat in all caps. So how does this 1,000 years of Revelation 20 fit in? If you remember in Revelation 20, and I know if you're Christian, you probably never read it. Maybe you read Revelation, but you never read the Bible cover to cover. But let me just recap for you, because I got 200,000 hours of study in the thing. It says Satan is bound for 1,000 years. The saints reign with Christ for 1,000 years. They call that the millennium. And then after the millennium, Satan gets released for a little while or a little season. And then comes Then comes the final judgment. And there's typically about 3 schools of thought on this within Christianity. There's premillennialism, and that means that we're living millennium, and that the 1,000 years is future and Jesus will physically reign on earth. Amillennialism means that the 1,000 years is only symbolic of the present church age. And then postmillennialism means that the 1,000 years represents a future era of the gospel flourishing before Christ's return. Now, what if they're all part of the actual occulted truth? And J. Mars makes a really good point. Revelation 20 is dark age material. It is dark age material. So those that say the millennium has already happened propose that Christ, and Christ really means the anointing and the flow, that it was outsourced on this dude, and he's been back for a while. The 1,000 years already occurred. It's been reinterpreted. And our current chronology includes an inserted millennium or misstated events. So however you look at it, the 1,000 years is a occulted or hidden chronological marker. Another idea is that the millennium is not just a future prophetic period, but a clue that an entire 1,000-year block has been concealed, duplicated, and occulted. And this interpretation is made by those of us that try to actually reconcile all of these ideas into a coherent narrative. And one thing you've got to understand is that there's 2 Christs in the Bible. There's the real Christ and the fake Christ. The real Christ is the word Christos in Greek. Even Christians admit that Christ isn't a name. And in the rules of language, you do not import a word or a name without it being translated unless it's a name. Watch any newscast in a foreign language. You'll hear Spanish, 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 Donald Trump. You'll hear German, 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 and then you'll hear Barack Obama. So why is the word Christ, which we know is not a name, brought over without being translated? Christ means flow, anointing. It means set aside for sacred service. So the real Christ of the Bible, the word Christos is in the Bible. That's anybody and everybody that wants to be set aside for sacred service, that wants to be connected to the flow of divinity, and that wants to have the anointing of divinity to do great works to help this earth and its people. The fake Christ is that this anointing, this flow, this being set up for sacred service is only for the Jesus character. Now, let's look at the other 2 Christs. We've got a suffering Christ, and we've got a victorious ruling Christ. We got a Jesus who conquers and rules, and we got a Jesus who suffers and gets rejected and dies. Most people would call that a contradiction. But the first original Messiah idea was the royal Messiah, descended from King David, destroys all of Israel's enemies, judges the nations, restores Israel, reigns in peace, and establishes God's kingdom on earth. That sounds exactly like Charlemagne. Daryl, you're right, but even saying Christ, it's like saying gender or homosexual instead of sex, or gender and gay instead of sex and homosexual. We're allowing them to change our language, which supports their narrative. We have to stop that. I'm not picking on him. I'm just trying to point out a fact. Charlemagne checked every box of the royal Messiah. Victorious, powerful, publicly recognized. And for all of the proto-Abrahamics in the first century, this is what they expected. And this idea is the very seed of the Charlemagne character. which established Christianity as we know it. But then you've got this other idea of the suffering Messiah. He's despised, he's rejected, he's beaten, he's silent before his accusers. He bears the sin of others. He dies, but yet he's vindicated afterwards. So he's opposite of the royal conqueror. Only among Christian minds that have been infected by the Abrahamic mind control virus can you have two completely oxymoronic, contradictory messiahs, and you say, thank you, Jesus, instead of, what the hell are these people talking about? It don't make no damn sense. That's why I do what I do. And Divine Heathen says he's not on TikTok because there's a lot of censorship. I hear you, Divine Heathen. I know it's tough. But if we retreat from everywhere there's censorship, then we won't get our message out at all. So I'd rather outthink them than just retreat. But that's my opinion. So this suffering servant, he didn't conquer Rome. He got conquered by Rome. He didn't judge anybody. He got judged. The only crown he ended up wearing allegedly was a crown of thorns. And he was killed. And as early as the first century, they realized something's wrong with this. It don't make any damn sense. How can the Messiah both reign forever and die? How can the Messiah both destroy the wicked and be destroyed by the wicked? Ooh, great talk by Divine Heathen. He says, with no history, we have no roots. And they've successfully removed our roots. I'm trying, and I think I'm doing a pretty good job. My entire work is trying to reconnect us with our roots. And here's how bad it is for me as far as censorship shadow banning. I tried to become an affiliate with 3 different nicotine patch companies. What's your YouTube channel? I put it on there. And these guys won't even let me be an affiliate for nicotine pouches because they know I make Christians mad and Christians are their big market. Welcome to my world. Won't you come on in? It's hard being me. It ain't easy when you're green, said that great philosopher Kermit the Frog. But I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep winning. And they may wait till after I'm dead to build my statue, but there'll be one, and I'll be wearing this jacket probably. So all these people are confused. Well, maybe we could explain it this way. Those are just interpreting the suffering rather than an actual Messiah. I am the face of Shadow Ban. Thank you. Musician official. There's really 2 Messiahs. Messiah ben Joseph and Messiah ben David. Only in Christianity. Only in Christianity. The land of the slow bus, the short bus. Only in Christianity can you take a contradiction as blatant as 2 contradictory oxymoronic messiahs, which is kind of important, the Messiah, and decide, oh, there's really just 2. It's kind of like we don't really drink the blood and eat the flesh of Jesus. It's just symbolic. And if you go back to our last DEprogram, you'll see how that's even worse. But smart people believe this, and it just blows my mind. It blows my mind. I don't know why they can't see it. I don't know why they can't see it. But we talked about this in our last DEprogram. Christianity came up with a solution. The Emmanuel effect. Forget the Mandela effect. It's a distraction. The Emmanuel effect, the lion and the lamb. Early Christians, which were proto-Abrahamics, they made up the perfect nonsense for people that have stopped thinking. Instead of two different messiahs, let's just have one Messiah with two phases. First, he was a suffering servant. First, he was a sacrificial lamb. First, he was a rejected prophet. First, he was an atoning sacrifice. But then in his second coming, which we're still waiting for, he'll return as a conquering king, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the ruler of the nations. And did you notice? Did you notice? It's always been wolf in the Hebrew, the wolf lying with the lamb. But they used the Mandela effect to hide the fact that they invented the lion of the lamb to go with the lion of the tribe of Judah, to go with the lamb of God, so they can make their nonsense work. Wow. Somebody said I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian and you don't make me mad. You can learn from people you disagree with. Wow. I thought that only Robert Stanley was I thought he was the one smart Christian left. As Pyramid 7 says, you might just come around. Thank you for being a gentleman. Thank you for thinking. Thank you for thinking. So this Emmanuel effect, which is occulted by the Mandela effect, created the lion and the lamb to cover the nonsensical competing messiahs. And the New Testament places the suffering text in Jesus' first coming and the royal text in his future coming, which is pretty impressive for a guy that we can't even prove was real. And this framework allows Christians to affirm both sets of the proto-Abrahamics and the second wave Abrahamics matrix. They turn it into prophecy without answering the fact that it's two contradictory individuals. This is the reason, one of the big reasons for the creation of the lion and lamb Emmanuel effect. Forget the Mandela effect. And even in Christian history, the early proto-Abrahamics and the early Christians expected the Roman occupation to end. That's why they threw down their palms and called him Hosanna. But instead, Jesus got crucified, if he was real. So it left people in the first century, whether in the story or in reality, if he was the Messiah, how come Rome still rules? That question remains central within the two thinking Christians now I've counted today. Well, Christians answered, he just hasn't finished yet. Am I the only one that thinks that sounds a whole lot like damage control? Does that sound like damage control to you? Even within the Gospels, Jesus seems to be schizophrenic. The Son of Man must suffer. Other times, the Son of Man's coming with the cloud, not the clouds, the cloud, we'll get into that, of heaven. He's going to receive everlasting dominion, rule. In this juxtaposition or this contradiction has led many people to see that the gospel writers were intentionally weaving together multiple scriptural portraits into a single figure. Oops, we got some contradictions. Let's just weave those things together because we know only 5% of Christians are going to read the Bible cover to cover, and we know only 5% of them are actually going to study it. And most of them will go along to get along, and most of the presenters will do it so they can keep getting paid, don't have to work like old Jeff does. Does this sound like damage control to you? Just asking a question. Does this sound like damage control to you? So let me speculate just a little bit. Is it possible that this idea of there's really two Christs, Jeff, you just don't understand, there's two Messiahs? Is it possible that these are just merged layers of tradition trying to correct a contradiction? It's kind of like the Millerites. Jesus is coming back in, I forget the year, was it 1848? He didn't come back. Oh, we got the math wrong. And today, those same people that predicted Jesus was coming back, sold everything, had their ascension robes, they still exist today as the Seventh-day Adventists, the Jehovah's Witnesses, and many other denominations. There can be a royal imperial Messiah and a suffering sacrificial Messiah. It's the same theology, it's just different emphases. We just combine it into one. It's split personalities. It's schizophrenic to the objective mind. And this contradiction, this tension has been around since Christianity's been around. And it's precisely these contradictions that have shaped the history of interpretation and theology. There's no debate anymore because they're too terrified. But I have to ask, and I have to suggest, I'm sorry they won't sponsor me too, but it is what it is. Even the mushroom guy won't sponsor me. And he's a great dude. He's a great dude. But he'd have to be working a job because all the Christians would be mad. You remember the C60 carbon guys? You're gone. You make Christians mad. Could Charlemagne be Jesus's lion? Could the bodily resurrection, salvation, Jesus be Jesus's lamb, living sacrifice with Jesus' blood over your intent? And I'm telling you, the Emmanuel Mandela effect exposed both. The Emmanuel effect is hiding the truth. The Mandela effect is a psyop that keeps you from finding the truth. If you want to know exactly what I'm talking about, these last two DEprograms are right on the channel. Check them out. And there's a condensed version that takes out the clips and all the stuff and just gets right to the actual discussion. Right to the actual discussion. So now we're ready to talk about the little season, and this is the big stuff. This is the big stuff. Again, if you want to ask a question, sweet shirts available in my Printful shop. If you want to ask a question, put it in the chat in all caps. I'll open the phone lines for you. But you can't just throw your stuff in the chat because this is a write-in show. This is not a write-in show, it's a call-in show. This is my studied, after 200,000 hours of study, 25 years of preaching, 5 continents of preaching. I think this is it. And I'll submit it for your consideration. What if we're living now in the little season, which is mentioned in the book of Revelation as coming after the millennium? What if Jesus already came? What if the millennium was the 1,000-year reign of Charlemagne? What if Satan has been released? I mean, isn't this current age, even if you ask the Christians, isn't it characterized by deception on a global scale? Guys like me? Aren't there a lot of anomalies in history, archaeology, institutions? Isn't there a lot of deception? This kind of gets us to the middle of what we're talking about tonight. And one thing to remember too is in the Bible, this term 1,000 years, it's called synecdoche. It's putting apart for the whole. It's like Psalm 59. God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. That doesn't mean he really owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. It means he owns the hills on all the cattle on all the hills. Peter says, one day with the Lord is as 1,000 years. That doesn't really mean one day with the Lord is 1,000 years. It conveys an idea that God's above time, their God, rather than just a rigid formula. And because of this, many scholars, even biblical scholars, say the millennium in Revelation is a symbolic period representing the fullness of God's reign rather than an exact 1,000 calendar years. And what if I could prove to you that the reign of Charlemagne has lasted about 1,000 damn years? Divine Heathen asks a question. I don't know if you want to call in on that one or not, but you certainly can. Does the Vatican have our records or were they destroyed like the Fort Knox gold? And it's interesting. I meant to do this, but I haven't. You know, Mnuchin and the Walking Dead senator from Kentucky, what's his name? Mitch McConnell. Last year, they went to Fort Knox and they took pictures with all this gold. But strangely, the pictures are in black and white. Who publishes black and white photos in the year 2026 or 2025? Are you kidding me? No, that's the wrong way, Arthur. They took the 1,000 years out of history. We actually are less than, not more, in my opinion. Crazy, isn't it? Crazy, isn't it, to think about? But in going to the symbology, Revelation, very, very symbolic. Loves their numbers 7, 12, 144,000, 42 months, 1,260 days, 1,000 years. It really just frames their prophetic, their scripted prophecy. So, does the 1,000 years have to be a literal 1,000 years? Or is it really a theological symbol? And thinking people have been talking about this and questioning it for 1,000 years. So this kind of goes into this idea. And suppose we accept it as a thought experiment just for a minute. You know, not today, Justin. Justin says, we really don't know anything. I appreciate you being very polite, but I think that's what they want us to think. Oh, we don't know anything. We can't know anything. Just give up and believe what everybody believes. Believe the easy thing. We can know just about everything about history if we're willing to dig for it. If we're willing to dig for it. That's my opinion. Yeah, Dead Wolf's like, yeah, it's almost like the gold wasn't there. It's almost like the gold wasn't there. That's why they had to put the pictures in black and white. So what if the millennium's already happened and it's been occulted? What if we're living today in what's called Satan's little season? If we did that, we could actually have, Justin, a coherent interpretive system. And that's what I'm presenting for you tonight. And we're a little more than halfway through. So, what does preterist mean? Well, preterist means that Revelation's already been fulfilled. Most of it right around the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. And you have to ask, has Christian chronology just reshaped those events in order to continue their narrative? This is a different line of inquiry from the added 1,000 years theory. That one doesn't even really matter. But if we accepted this, it would harmonize everything, Justin, and we can know everything about this particular subject. So rather than asking, when will revelation happen? Maybe we should be asking, what if revelation and its millennium already happened? Already happened. Save that one, Super Galactic. It's a good question. It doesn't quite get to our subject, so we'll save that one. So the strongest argument that revelation already happened and the millennium already happened is Revelation itself, written about 100 AD, constantly says, Paul constantly said, the time is near. I'm coming quickly. These things must soon take place. Doesn't it matter what the people that were listening to them thought they were saying? If these words are taken at face value, the book should primarily concern the people that they were talking to, not people living 1,000 years later, unless they're trying to build a scripted prophetic narrative. What about the Great Tribulation? Oh, 7 years is coming in the future. What if it was the Roman siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD? Oh, no, Jeff, we're going to have war, famine, cannibalism, destruction of the temple, loss of life. They had all that in 70 AD. Most objective scholars say that Jesus' writings in what's called the Olivet Discourse, Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, describes the events of AD 70, and it describes it to a T. So, Justin and other people, if I could prove to you from the Bible that the abomination of desolation happened in AD 70, would that change your way of thinking? Because Christian eschatology, Christian end time thinking, Christian last days thinking says, oh, the temple's going to be rebuilt. And then the Antichrist is going to go into the temple. He's going to pollute the temple. That's the abomination of desolation. Justin trying to sneak in his FE. It's not just like FE. It's totally different than FE. If I could show you that the Gospels teach that the abomination of desolation occurred in AD 70, would that cause you to think a little bit? Or that cause you to sit with this a little bit? Because the whole idea of the abomination of desolation and the future tribulation, that's one of the biggest proof texts for this Christian end time last days, I'll say it, nonsense. Because the foundation for Christian last days thinking is a future tribulation, a rebuilt third temple, the rise of Antichrist, and the abomination of desolation. As it appears in the Bible, referenced by Jesus in the Gospels, if I could prove that happened in the past, will that change your thinking that you're waiting for it to happen in the future? I never heard of purple dawn theory. I'm going to write that down. I've heard of purple rain theory, but not, what's that called? Purple dawn. Purple dawn. Purple dawn, purple dawn. So let's look at that. Let's look at that. So where does the phrase abomination of desolation originate? Daniel 8, 9, 11, and 12. The Hebrew words convey the idea of a detestable sacrilegious thing that causes desolation or desecrates a temple and leaves it, at least spiritually, but probably physically destroyed. That's going to happen in the future, Jeff. The red heifer. I mean, brilliant people thinking that the history of the human race is going to be decided by a red cow. It blows my mind. It blows my mind. Smart people like Robert Stanley, smart people like apparently Justin. Maybe I'm giving him too much. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit. Don't be rude or you get banned. What if I could prove it already happened? And what if I can prove that it's already commemorated by Hanukkah, which Jesus kept? And if you don't think Jesus was a proto-Abrahamic and he's keeping Hanukkah, wearing his yarmulke, I mean, come on. Come on. So the historical backdrop of the reign of Antiochus Epiphanes, if you're a Bible scholar, you know that name, is that he set up either an idol or a pig in the temple. And then the Maccabees came along and beat him, supposedly. And they only had enough light for like 1 or 2 days, enough oil for 1 or 2 days. And the thing burned for 7, and it was a miracle. And even Jesus celebrated it. But then Jesus himself said, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel, standing in the holy place, Matthew 24:15. Jesus refers to Daniel as though the prophecy still had relevance. And if Antiochus had already fulfilled it by Jesus' time, why would Jesus be speaking of it as happening in the future from his perspective? And this is the question that gets dodged in all of these discussions. Now, the Revelation as history says that all these warnings of Jesus, and they're right, were all about the destruction of Jerusalem. And the abomination is the Roman desecration of the temple, and I'm going to prove it to you. So if the abomination was the Roman desecration of Jerusalem, then we're not waiting for a future, and that's not my proof. We're not waiting for a future abomination of desolation. It's already happened. So Revelation's already happened. And of course, all these events fit. All these descriptions of Jesus fit AD 70. He even told the people that are living in Judea to get the hell out. These are facts, and you have to deal with facts. You have to deal with facts, unless apparently you're a Christian. And Cynthia had a great joke. I'm talking about Christianity as a short bus of religion. We were driving down the road one day, and I saw this school bus, and it was a really big, long school bus. It really was. But Cynthia, and she's not a person that is given to caustic humor, but I said, look at how long that school bus is. And she says, perfectly timed and just perfectly, so she says, honey, it only looks long because the ones that you rode were all really short. And I was on the Christian short bus for 25 years. But all Christians today, all MAGA, all Q, all Christian nationalists, all Christian identists say that the abomination of desolation, the destruction of the rebuilding, destruction of the temple, it's all going to be in the future. Jeff, a third temple will be rebuilt in Jerusalem. They're finding red heifers right now. And the future Antichrist, maybe it's Trump, maybe it's a Muslim, we don't know. He's going to enter the temple. He's going to control it. He's going to stop the real worship, which is going back to blood sacrifice, which is kind of interesting. He'll proclaim himself divine and demand worship. So the abomination of desolation becomes the climactic act of a future end times revelation. Which one lines up better with Scripture? Can we look at it and see which one lines up better with Scripture? Here's every verse of the abomination of desolation in the Bible. The New Testament, we already talked about the Daniel ones. Matthew 24, 15, 16, spoken of by Jesus himself. The words of Christ are in red to emphasize the Jesus blood over your intent. Mark 13, also words of Jesus in blood red. I used to think it was just blood red of children. It's not. It's to show you that it's Jesus' blood over your intent. That's why you stop thinking. Luke 21, 20, also in the red words. What if I told you that this little chart is all you really need? If you're really looking, Justin, Robert Stanley, if you're watching, this little chart is all you really need if you're actually looking for a biblical answer to this question. Matthew 24 and Mark 13 was written first. So let's go in chronological order. Mark says, and it wasn't really Mark, but the guy that they call Mark says, when you see the abomination of desolation standing where it should not. And then in my opinion, Matthew wrote next, and he said, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel standing in the holy place. Now, everybody reading Matthew 24 would have already read Mark 13. They would have already read Mark 13. When you see the abomination of desolation, what's he talking about exactly? Oh, we got Matthew 24. Now, here's the new book. Here's the new letter. They were all letters. Here's the new letter. Let me make this larger for you. When you see the abomination of desolation that Mark was talking about, that's the one spoken of by Daniel. Oh, yeah, I remember that. Standing in the holy place. Oh, yeah, the temple. So if you heard this, got the letter, take a letter, Maria. If you got the letter, abomination, desolation, then you got the next letter. Oh, yeah, the abomination, desolation spoken by Daniel. Standing in the holy place. I get it. I understand that now. I get it. And then comes the book of Luke, written at the same time as Acts by the same guy. He says, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies. Whoa! He didn't have to reference Daniel because Mark and Matthew already had. Woo! When you see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel standing in the holy place, understand. Oh, Luke says it's Jerusalem surrounded by armies. Do you see how that actually makes sense? When you see the abomination of desolation standing where it shouldn't be, what's he talking about? I think I know. Oh, the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel standing in the holy place. Yeah, I get it. And then Luke says, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, oh, I get it. Then what? Let those in Judea flee. Get the hell out of Jerusalem. Don't even pack your shit. Just go. I guess stop saying that word. It's on the Twitter or TikTok list. Now that makes sense. And if you're trying to make sense of it, that's all you need. But if you're not trying to make sense of it, then you won't. You won't. Maybe you got the call that Rabbi Layton was talking about, and you've been activated. You can't think for yourself anymore. Luke doesn't mention an idol. Luke doesn't mention a pig. Luke doesn't mention an antichrist. He says, when you see Jerusalem surrounded, get the hell out. Was Jerusalem surrounded by armies in AD 70? Yes, it was. So the abomination, according to the New Testament, is not some object inside the sanctuary in the future, but the military encirclement that destroyed Jerusalem and the temple, which happened in AD 70. You know, sometimes truth is just that simple. And I hate to tell you, Justin and Robert Stanley, words mean things, even when they're in the Bible. You can understand words everywhere else, but somehow when words come in the Bible, you can't understand them anymore. And may I respectfully say that's your problem, not mine? That's called proof, ladies and gentlemen. That's called proof. Oh, but Jeff, the whore of Babylon, Babylon the Great is fallen. Babylon's not great anymore. Well, how does the Bible describe Babylon in Revelation? It says, it's the city where the prophets were killed. The prophets were killed in Jerusalem. It's the city where the Lord was crucified, allegedly. He was crucified in Jerusalem, not Babylon. A lot of righteous blood being shed. 1 million of them died. I haven't got to the short season yet. Not today. Wait, you'll see it. Guess what? Babylon the Great, that ain't Rome, cousin. That ain't Babylon, cousin. That's Jerusalem. And that's the Bible. I'll put the printful in the chat below. Let me pull it up real quickly. My printful is, what is it? My printful. My printful store is, it's Unindoctrinate Yourself. Let me view the store. It's called Unindoctrinate Yourself. That's the store. We got mugs in there. We got the I Do Believe posters. We even got rods in there. If you want to buy rods, I'll make rods. So anyway, thanks for asking. Unindoctrinate, and I'll put it in the box after the show. So even Babylon in Revelation is Jerusalem, and the whore of Babylon. If Babylon is Jerusalem, who's the whore of Jerusalem? Somebody said Erica Kirk. I can't argue with that. I can't say whore on TikTok either. I'm going to have to change my ways. Wow. We're getting deep now. I'm giving you things to think about. I'm upsetting some religious apple carts. So we know that Jesus, if he was crucified in Jerusalem. So could Revelation's Babylon and whore of Babylon represent the entire whorish Abrahamic system rather than ancient Babylon or a future Babylon? Wow. It checks every box. Jerusalem being destroyed, surrounded by armies, was the abomination of desolation, and it sets up the little season. And I already talked about the second coming of Christ, where anybody that wants to be in the flow, wants to be in the anointing, wants to be empowered to do works of service to the earth and its people, is a Christos, is the anointed. But they want us to think it's just one dude who's going to come again. They keep saying he's going to come again. They keep saying he's going to come again. He was resurrected. He's going to judge. He's going to reign. And we're still waiting. We're still waiting. Does this sound to you like cognitive dissonance? We know what's going to happen, even though we've had to change the game a few times. We know it's going to happen. Confirmation bias. Jeff, I know it's going to happen because the Bible says it, even though I can't prove it. Does that sound like cognitive dissonance to you? Does that sound like confirmation bias? And now we get Flavius Josephus. The Christians love Josephus, but they never call him Flavius Josephus because that proves he was a traitor that turned his back on his own people and watched 1 million of them die while he ate peeled grapes from probably a little boy down in Rome. But do you know that Josephus himself, who the Christians love except when they don't, Josephus said that during don't send Jesus out for cigarettes because he ain't coming back. He'll just take your money. Don't send him with the rent. Josephus described things happening in AD 70 in the destruction of Jerusalem. He said there was a star in the sky that resembled a sword. He said he saw armies in the clouds. He said there were strange voices and rumblings in the temple. He said that the temple doors that took like 70 dudes to open were opening by themselves and closing. He saw strange lights. He said the whole damn thing got destroyed. Well, that's because not today, FE is 95% Christian. So if you view this objectively, these accounts parallel exactly Revelation imagery. And Christians, laughably, respond that Josephus was writing in an ancient style that often incorporated omens and portents. So caution is needed when reading these reports literally, except, of course, when he said Jesus was real. You can read that one literally, and I'll touch on that. Josephus reported a sword star over the city, and it stayed there for a year. He said there was a bright light surging around the temple. It was as bright as daylight, even at night. The priests even thought initially it was a good sign, but then they realized it wasn't. Could this light in the temple, this surging in the temple, have been an attempt to activate a portal that was in the temple? Probably centered with the Ark of the Covenant. And their attempt to open this portal to try to escape or bring in reinforcements was thwarted. Could that be? Josephus said that they saw chariots and armed troops in the clouds surrounding the city. Extraordinary language. Multiple witnesses, daylight observation, vehicles in the sky, armies in the clouds. And he says chariots, but he was writing in the 70s AD. All he knew was chariots. Is this why they want us to think that all UFOs are demons? All aliens are demons? And I can't help wondering, does this tie in with the portal idea? And even then, involvement of space forces, consistent with Rabbi Laitman's assertions and mine. Rabbi Laitman says they're aliens. They're from another galaxy, another dimension. And I say they're trapped here because there's a good space force, not Trump's, but there's a good fleet out there, which we got to be careful about on YouTube. You know what I think. Jesus had one job and he couldn't even do it. He was supposed to dirt nap for 3 days and 3 nights and he didn't do it. Good one, divine heathen.
In fact, we're not coming from here. We came from there. Like this. This is Israel at their root. So we went through such a route that took us inside by what's called the shattering of the vessels. The shattering of the collective soul.
Who's the chief of staff that sent this command unit?
Him, the Creator. Israel is a part of Him.
So, seemingly this chief of staff sent this command unit,
Sent the commando, gave them strength, gave them the connections, everything. And if they're connected to Him, but they have no choice. He broke them. He shattered them. What does it mean? In order to put them inside the hostile land, He had to give them the same form of that hostile land. It's like we go into a country as an undercover team. And each one of us is exactly like the people of the land. Say we're being now sent somewhere, Africa, for instance. So we'll take on the same shape and form of the people in Africa. The characteristics, traits, approach, interests, everything. The same exact form, inside and out. As we are there, it's like an undercover agent. He is there for a while, no one touches him, he has to start working, build a house, family, everything is fine, okay, for years and years. After that, he starts doing something. He gets a reminder from outside. You got to start working. He already forgot about it. And all of a sudden, they call him, here is your commander, this and this and that. Like in the movies. And like in Jason Bourne. And this is what's happening with us. We have to wake up. We have to remember that we have a special mission. And really, this isn't our place. We're coming from a completely different place. So we have to find our friends according to this awakening. Did you get a phone call? I got a phone call. He got a phone call, and so on. And then we gather as a group. So, from this entire planet, we are aliens. We're coming from a different galaxy. We received this ray of light, this awakening, individually, and now we're gathering as groups, starting to prep ourselves to conquer Earth. That's the mission. What? You don't see it?
how do we conquer it?
How do we conquer it? We're also sent the method. We're being shown everything gradually. We're being taught. Not taught, but kind of being trained, activated, and then that emotion and mind awakens in us. But in fact, it's new to us, but in fact it's coming from our original planet. And thanks to that original natural force we have, we will take over. We'll take over those living on Earth. What are you looking at me like that? You don't believe what I'm telling you? I'm telling you seriously. It's even more than that. It's not a different galaxy. It's a different universe. It's a different dimension altogether. That's who we are.
So when someone tells you who they are, it's best if you just believe them. They just described the entire Abrahamics, fear and guilt, blood magic, mind control matrix. Jeff, you're crazy, but he told you the same things I tell you. What's the name of the planet? That's actually a good question. That is the Judeo-Christian story in a nutshell. It's everything I'm telling you about tonight. Josephus saw chariots in the clouds. Ties in with my portal idea. Ties in that even in AD 70, there were space forces consistent with what Rabbi Laitman just told us. Whenever they came, they were here a long time for AD 70, and they had a spaceship then. What makes you think they don't have a spaceship now? But he said it was chariots, Jeff. It was first century understanding. They didn't have UFOs then. Be careful with the J word, please. So even the UFO researchers say, wow, this is history's earliest report of UAPs, objects in formation, witnesses, military imagery. And you know what the voice was that came out of the temple? It said, Ichabod, the glory has departed. In other words, let us get the hell out of here. And there was even this guy named Jesus. Oh, you thought there's only one Jesus? No, there's this guy named Jesus of Aeneas. He was the man named Jesus. And for 7 years before the Romans showed up, he wandered around Jerusalem crying, "Woe to Jerusalem!" Is this the type of the modern anti-Semitic stereotype? The authorities beat him, they mocked him. I know how he felt, but he refused to stop, just like me. Finally, during the Roman siege, he got killed by a stone from a Roman, stone thrower. What were those things called? I think they're trying to hide the story because even they know we win. Why does Josephus include those stories? He was making a theological argument. God warned the people, the warnings were ignored, and judgment followed. Even Josephus knows we win. And these reports remain among the most unusual passages in ancient historical writing, and most of you have never even heard them because they've been occulted, hidden by the Abrahamics matrix. Chariots and armed troops in the clouds, vivid imagery. Was it UFOs? And what bearing does this have on the current aliens are demons Christian hysteria? Okay, Jeff, that was just Josephus, even though he's the only proof that Jesus was real. And I think we talked about that on Wednesday. Even he's the only proof outside the Bible that Jesus was real. That's just Josephus. Did anybody else see it? Well, people saw it and actually wrote it down. You ever heard of a guy named Tacitus, renowned as the greatest historian of the ancient world, or the first century world anyway? Tacitus, writing in the book Histories, which was the first history book, Tacitus said that there were armies seen fighting in the skies over Jerusalem. He saw the UFOs just like Josephus did. Just like Jesus did. Let me show you cognitive dissonance in action. Did the mountains move at the beginning of the millennium or when Satan was released for a short season? Justin, if you're a student of the Bible, you know that mountains are often nations. And I give you plain biblical proof that Luke said that the abomination of desolation was Jerusalem surrounded by armies, and you're asking me if mountains moved. That's cognitive dissonance. That's confirmation bias. And I used to be right where Justin is. But it took me about 7 years, but I finally got tired of making excuses. Tacitus said, armies in the sky, weapons in the heavens. Tacitus said it. Let me show you this big. Tacitus said it. Strange lights, surging lights in the temple. The doors opening by themselves. A superhuman voice that said the gods are departing. And a great sound that accompanied the departure. Tacitus said this. Even Jesus said in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, we got 2 witnesses outside the Bible, Josephus and Tacitus, who both saw UFOs in the heavens. Why does this matter for biblical prophecy? Josephus and Tacitus both saw UFOs in the heavens, both saw Jerusalem surrounded by armies, both saw the temple get destroyed. Both described extraordinary phenomena in connection with the same historical crisis that echoed the events that Jesus foretold. We are going to win, and they know it. They just don't want you to know it. Too late. Too late. Because now you do. Now you do. And I got to touch on the Testimonium Flavianum, the most important text in all of Christian history. It's in the Antiquities of the Jews, book 18, which equals a 9, where the Jewish to Roman traitor, Flavius Josephus, we're told describes Jesus. At this time appeared Jesus, a wise man, if we could even call him a man. He did startling deeds. He was the Messiah. He took a dirt nap and they saw him alive again on the 3rd day. But immediately historians said, ruh-roh, something don't add up. Josephus was a Jewish aristocrat. He wasn't a Christian. He never converted. He said that Vespasian was the Messiah. He was a loyal Jew. So why would he write that Jesus was the Messiah, especially when he said Vespasian was the Messiah? Why would he say we can't even call him a man? Why would they say he rose from the dirt nap? Those are Christian confessional statements. I agree with you, Arthur. It is BS. There is a simulation, but it's an overlay over our real divine earth. Most scholars doubt that these words were written by Josephus. Some say it's a complete forgery, because it is. It was written centuries later by a guy named Eusebius. Early Christian writers like Origen quote Josephus, but they never ever quoted this Testimonium Flavianum that Josephus wrote, allegedly. Eusebius is the first writer known to quote the Testimonium in its form, and he didn't do it until the 4th century. The 4th century. What is the purpose of controllers keeping people confused? So they won't look for the truth. And because they're afraid of going to hell, they'll accept whatever nonsense you feed them. His quote of Josephus was never used by anybody but him. And his words contain words that Josephus never used anywhere else in all of his writings. And his words, supposedly quoting Josephus, contain words and phrasings that only Eusebius is known to have used in the entire history of literature. Even Christians historians admit that Josephus probably did mention Jesus, but he embellished the passage. He lied, but that's okay. You can lie if you're lying to promote Jesus. They even say he meant to say something like Jesus was a wise man, performed great deeds, got condemned by Pilate, rose from the dead, and Christians remain to this day. But they forget the part where he said that he was the Messiah. And these are exactly the things that Christians add later. And oh, by the way, interesting fun fact, Origen never said these things, and Josephus said the copy of Eusebius said the copy he had of Josephus's Antiquities was given to him by Origen, the greatest mind Christianity ever produced, and he didn't happen to find it, but Josephus, the traitor who watched 1 million of his own people die, did find it. It was made up. And only the head in the sand, Q people, Christian nationalists, MAGA people, Christian identityists, only they will argue that Josephus wrote that passage. This requires explaining why a non-Christian Jewish person would affirm Jesus as the Messiah without any evidence anywhere that Josephus ever became a Christian. For objective thinking historians, that remains difficult, actually quite ludicrous. And this matters because Josephus was the most important non-Christian historian of first century Judea. It's the only non-biblical proof of the Christian doctrine that proves Jesus existed, that proves he was crucified under Pontius Pilate, and proves that he was bodily resurrected. The entire passage, according to objective scholars, is a later Christian insertion. They made it up. This disqualifies the only extra biblical reference to Jesus being real. Wow. And remember, Josephus was a guy that was Jewish, got captured, got a revelation that Vespasian was the Messiah, and then got adopted by the Roman royal family and started writing his stuff. Why would God hang out the litter box of the world? Why would he hang out in the litter box of the world? Good question. Good question. Really good question. So the inescapable literary evidence shows that Eusebius of Caesarea knowingly and intentionally lied, made up words, and put them in the mouth of Josephus. He was the earliest author to quote it. No other writer quoted it. And he, Eusebius, was interested in proving Christians' story. And in one fell swoop, Eusebius reshaped history itself and gave Christianity its one and only Jesus was a real person outside the Bible proof text. If you call yourself a Christian, you got to deal with the facts. So let's connect all these dots. Let's connect all these dots. We're heading for home now. Let's connect these dots. We talked on the last DEprogram about Josephus and Paul, probably the same dude. We've shown that Revelation abomination of desolation, and all of it was already fulfilled at the destruction of Jerusalem. And this testimonium Flavianum sits at the crossroads of all of this because it shows us that Christian history has been faked from day one. It shows that Christians faked the historical record with a blatant fakery, blatant forgery, and that modern Christians just keep repeating the same lies, hoping that in doing so they can make them true. And unfortunately, for way too many folk and kin, they have made them true. But to me, one of the biggest ironies is that the lying of Christian copyists exposes this hidden occulted reality of objective history. Manuscripts are written by people who even the Christians will admit made changes, sometimes accidentally, a lot of times intentionally. So we have to ask, if this one was faked, how much of Christian history can we believe? And we that dare to compare manuscripts, examine language, weigh independent sources, we're the bad guys. The Flavian imperial family, with Josephus's involvement, shaped and promoted the Christian narrative for political purposes and is the sole historical extra-biblical proof behind this foundational doctrine of Christian tradition. It was a forgery. Origen quoted Josephus from the literal same damn set of books that Eusebius had, and he never, ever found this most important passage in the whole histories if you're a Christian. Or Origen, your greatest mind, never found it. Yet later, Eusebius finds it, quotes it, using words that Josephus never used, and words that Eusebius used all the time. That raises suspicion. How dare you question the narrative? You're right, Daryl. But suppose AD 70 was more significant than they want us to admit. Did it mark a reset of civilization? Was the destruction of Jerusalem only one piece of a much larger upheaval? What if there's another story? Now let's hit this little season. Christ did return. He didn't, but it did. The it of the Christ, the anointed, those in the flow, those empowered to do the works of service to the earth and humanity, we're back, baby. Satan was bound, and I'm going to tell you who Satan was and is. The millennium already occurred. Satan's already been released. And in my opinion, we're living today, right now, in the little season. The challenge is to find when the 1,000 years happened. And Charlemagne is the answer. And if it happens in the future, how do we understand the Bible saying it's going to happen any minute, over and over and over? So, let me wrap this up. If we were to date the millennium to Charlemagne, if we're to take the 1,000 years out of human history that's been added, instead of 2026, we're in 1026. 1,000 years. And the timeline of the real millennium is no longer missing. Today, we're living in the little season, right here, right now. because the 1,000 years have expired. The 1,000 years of Charlemagne's reign of Christianity being large and in charge is over. This fits the Charlemagne narrative exactly. I'm supposed to go deep into Bible Hub. I don't think I'm going to do that right now. When the 1,000 years are expired, it fits the Charlemagne narrative exactly. And if we go back to verse 1 in Bible Hub, you can read this, Revelation 20, verse 1. There was an angel, which is a messenger. And when you read and look at the definition of messenger, it means a messenger delivering a message to a flock. Who are flocks? The Christians are a flock. This squares it right in the middle of the Abrahamic matrix. The King James Version heading says Satan bound 1,000 years. And it says that he saw this angel come down or descend from heaven. That word heaven in Revelation 20 does not mean heaven where you think God lives. It means the sky. The actual word is Uranus. That's why they got us to believe that all aliens are demons. It's kosher disclosure. And Ephesians 2:2 says, you walked and conformed to the ways of this world and the ruler of the power of the air, who's now at work in the sons of disobedience. This is both kosher disclosure and inversion and projection. It's kosher disclosure because it shows that Yahweh is the sky god and Jesus, the sky god. They are the true prince of the powers of the air. And yet the real spirit of disobedience that is now at work in this little season are us, the sons of disobedience, that are returning to the ways of our home, our folk, our ancestors, and rejecting Rabbi Laitman's invaders. They call us disobedient when we're just disobedient to their lies, and when we're just defending our earth and our folk and our kin from invaders that said themselves, I just played it for you, that they're here to take over our earth. And they had or possessed the key, the thing that holds you down and locks you out. And when you get possessed by the Jesus Spirit, it locks you out of your connection to the real earth. It locks you out of your connection to your ancestors. It locks you out to the connection with your folk. And they locked us in the abyss, the bottomless pit, the abyss. That means you're isolated, you're alone. You've been dead and sacrificed. And if you're a kin and a folk like we are, you feel isolated and alone. And if you have made yourself a living sacrifice, you're already dead in sacrifice. They put us in a chain, a big old chain, which is a fetter, a manacle, a bond. And if you're a Christian, every single place in the New Testament, the word servant means a slave. It's doulos is the word. The book of Revelation is a PSYOP operation, Manuel J. Mars. The whole Bible is. And he held it in his hand, the key. That's a Hebraism, which means he had the instrument. Christianity is the Hebraic means of your slave existence if you're a Christian. And these Hebrews seized and held the dragon, which in Revelation, if you look it up, means the fabulous serpent. That's us, baby. They called him the ancient, the original, the primordial serpent. That's us heathens. He's the devil, which means accuser and slanderer. We're the accusers. We're the slanderers. I'm the chief accuser. I'm the chief slanderer of Yahweh and the Abrahamic matrix. I'm Satan. I'm the accuser. And he bound them in a bond of marriage because he's trying to create a bride of Christ. If you are a human now that has accepted an invitation to be the bride of Christ, you're in a bond of marriage that locks you out from your people. And do you know what happens to the bride on the wedding night? Get ready. And how can a dude be part of the bride of Christ? And the word 1,000 years is actually 10 to the third power. And again, it's almost literally 1,000, but it doesn't have to be. And Satan, the heathens, were placed into an abyss, and they shut us up. I was kicked off YouTube for 5 years. They shut me up. And they set a seal upon many, many heathens, which means mark with a seal. And Revelation 7:4 says, the number of those who were sealed, marked with a seal, 144,000 from all the tribes of Israel. And these Christians want to tell us they're the new Israel. But they locked me out. They locked us out so that we, the devil, serpent, Satan, the heathens, we can no longer deceive the nations, the Gentiles, the ethnic groups, the folk and kin. We can no longer deceive them. We can no longer preach our gospel. They wouldn't let me preach the true gospel for 5 years on YouTube until the 1,000 years come to an end. They cut off our ability. They cut off my ability to preach the real gospel to real humans. But after that, after the conclusion of the 1,000-year millennium, we, me, the heathens with the real gospel truth it's necessary. They got no choice. We have to be loose. And I'm back on YouTube. Are you kidding me? I'm back on YouTube. I had to be loose. They had to take the chains off, and they're going to remonetize me. You watch. For a little season, a small amount of time. But Jeff, we just got a little season. They're laughing at us and our suffering. You're right, Supergalactic. We only got a little season, Jeff. We only got a short amount of time. Guess what? That's all we need. Just a little time to reach the last generation of real humans. I'm back, baby. We're not in a rush. They are. Because time, it's on our side. Yes, it is. Time's on our side. They're running out. We got all the time we need, baby. And then I saw thrones and those that sat upon them, and judgment was given to them. For 1,000 years since the reign of Charlemagne, everyone that sits on the thrones of the Abrahamically controlled nations, which is all of them, have been given the authority to rule and judge us heathens. J.D. Vance, Charlie Kirk, Erica Kirk, Stu Peters, all of them. They're judging us. Little Nikki, what's his name? Nikki Fuentes says we should be killed. For 1,000 years, they were able to shut us up. And then it says in Revelation 20, I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for. That word for, look it up. That word means because of. Who was beheaded because of Jesus and the Bible God? Heathens who wouldn't bow the knee. Those who didn't worship the beast of the Abrahamic matrix. Those that wouldn't bow down to his image. What is the image of Christianity if not the cross and the crucifix? Those who had not received his mark on their foreheads. They put that little cross on their forehead every Lent. In their hands. Even these YouTube presenters, the hand represents your work. They won't say boo about Christians because they don't want to lose their money. It's that same seal. And they, the heathens, we still lived and reigned as our own anointed, as our own flow with divinity. We still didn't lose our integrity during those 1,000 years. We refused to bow the knee. And that alone proves the Bible lies, because it says every knee shall bow, not this knee, babe. Even during this reign of Abrahamics, even during this millennium, we retained our integrity, like the great Job said, the oldest book in the Bible. And guess what? The new earth, golden age of humanity, heathen reign will last much longer than 1,000 years. In fact, it already has. Christianity's only been around for 1,000 years. Heathenry's been around for 50,000 years. You know what Christianity is? It's Johnny come lately, the new religious kid in town. Everybody loves him. Oh, but we're still around. And at the end of that song, everybody leaves Johnny come lately. They come back like divine heathen is talking about, to our ancestors, our folk, our kin. And we leave the Johnny come lately. But the rest of the dead, those doulos, those slaves who did bow to the Abrahamics, they didn't live again because they had already become living sacrifices, according to the words of Paul, until that 1,000-year millennium was finished. So this seems to indicate that you heathen traitors listening to me, those of you that have turned your back on your gods, your folk, your kin, your ancestors, you might get another shot if you wake the hell up. And that's the first resurrection. Being a slave to bodily resurrection. I'll cover that Wednesday. But you heathen traitors may not get another shot. This might be your last shot. Because Romans 8:11 says, if the spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead, that's the Father God, Yahweh, if he lives in you, if you accept him into your body to be possessed by, he will give life to your mortal body. And that means that which is subject to death. Through this entity that inhabits and possesses you. Are you willing to give up your great heritage to be a slave to a God that his followers have told you comes from another dimension, another planet, another galaxy, and he's here to kill the earth and all its people? Blessed and holy is he that hath parts in this first resurrection. I'm signing up to follow Jesus because I want to be a priest of God in Christ. I want to reign 1,000 years. Your time's up. And even if I'm wrong and the time comes in the future, are you willing to trade your eternal existence for 1,000 years as a slave? Even if you happen to be one of the lucky ones that gets to have some celebrity? You know, this whole thing about selling your soul to the devil, that's selling your soul to the devil. And you know, you always met the devil at the crossroads. If the crossroads are where you meet a demon, then the most famous crossroads demon of them all is Jesus. But even if you believe me, or even if you don't, your own Bible says in Revelation 20, verse number 7, when those 1,000 years are expired, and they already have, we will be loosed out of our prison. And verse number 8 has a big significance. Can't talk about it here, but it's got a big significance. We will go out again and preach the gospel to the nations. The people that aren't Israel. That's what the word nations means, the Gentiles. I'm doing it tonight. From the whole earth, every part of the earth. Gog. Oh, Gog is this, Gog is that. Just look it up in the Bible Hub. Gog just means a name for a heathen nation. That's exactly what it means. And Magog. Because in case you didn't get it the first time because you've been on the short bus, Gog means a name for a heathen nation. Magog means a nation foreign to Israel. And all of you Christian nationalists and all you Christian identities, all you MAGAs, all you Qs, you know that you're Israel, right? We're going to go out and preach the real gospel to our people. And we're going to be gathered together in battle. And our number will be as the sand of the sea. Oh, Jeff, we need the Christians. We ain't got enough people. That's because you're a coward. We got plenty of people. We don't play the numbers game that the Abrahamics and their slaves do. We don't play that game. We know we got more than enough to get this deed done. Why? Because they even had to tell you in their own book. 8 and 8 is 16, which is a 7. Magog, MAGA, good, Arthur. But it kind of does violence to the word because it's us and we're not MAGA. How come we don't need a bunch of people, Jeff? Because when you're a heathen, 5 of you can run off 100 of these cowardly Christians. 100 of us can run off 10,000 of these cowardly Christians, and they will fall by the sword before you. That's why I say there doesn't have to be, I still don't believe there has to be a hot kinetic war. If there is, we'll deal with that. But if they know that just 5 of us can run off 100 of them, if they know that just 100 of us will pursue 10,000 of them, somebody do the math, we don't need many. And when they see the folk, which for me is white people, because that's my folk, and when they see our kin, all of the brown, black, red, and yellow gals and fellows that have not bowed the knee to that Jesus fellow, they'll see us coming and they will run because they know we're coming and we're bringing an ass whipping with us. They will run and we will chase them out of our planet, out of our universe, out of our galaxy, and out of our universe. And we will pursue them to the ends. I'm going to get me a sword, Dead Wolf. We will pursue them to the ends. And then, and this is verse number 9, which is Tesla. Know the power of 9. And then we will go up upon the breadth of the earth, and we will surround again the camp of the saints and that beloved city, Jerusalem. We are the abomination of desolation to the Judeo-Christian fear and guilt, blood magic, mind control matrix. And fire will come down out of heaven and devour them. Devour who? Will there be another space battle? There'll be a loser and there'll be a winner. Who's going to get devoured by the fire? Well, the historical precedence of AD 70 looms large. And the devil, the adversary that deceived them, who got deceived, will be cast into a lake of fire and brimstone, which is sulfur, where the beast who I proved on, what is this, Sunday? I proved on Wednesday that Jesus is the beast in this verse, and the false prophet, which would be the Apostle Paul and company, are. Where are they? They're in the Abrahamic's bodily resurrection reincarnation loop right now. And they will be tormented. Doesn't mean burned by fire. It means vexed and distressed. If you're a heathen and you've left your people and turned your back on your ancestors, you will regret it. You ever heard of the Fram oil filter man? You'll regret it day and night forever. Back in the day when I was a kid, there was this commercial, and it was from Fram oil filters. And this person's going in and getting their car service, and they said, "Hey, can I replace your oil filter?" And they said, "Nah." And the Fram oil filter man, that person comes back about 3 months later and their engine is seized. And he said, "You can pay me now or you can pay me later." If you're a heathen tonight, you're not of the nation of Israel. If you're a heathen tonight, be you white, black, brown, red, or yellow, if you haven't bowed the knee to that Jesus fellow, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. It might be a little uncomfortable to change your oil filter. It's going to be a whole lot worse when your engine seizes. But admittedly, it's not open and shut, closed, who wins and who loses. Though if we stay just to the text and only the text, it seems pretty clear that the Abrahamic matrix loses. So what's your choice? Like Jack Nicholson said in the first Batman with Michael Keaton, hubba, 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 who do you trust? Who do you trust? What's your choice? What's your choice? And I saw a great white throne and him that sat on it. From his face, the real earth and heaven fled away. There was no place for them. Who's them? And then the small and dead. Here's a big revy. Here's a small, big revy. I saw the dead, small and great, standing before the Most High God. And that word in Revelation doesn't mean the Bible God. It means gods. And the books were open. And another book was open, which is the book of life. You know what that word book means in Revelation? It means bark. Bark. Not like bark of a dog, but bark of a tree. So it's the tree of the living. And we're judged out of those things. Is that the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life? It's one tree, the tree of life and the knowledge of good and evil. You know, the one that said that you are God's and will live forever, and that the Bible God's been lying to you? You remember the one that said, oh, you're not going to surely die. You don't need bodily resurrection via sacrifice and Jesus blood over urine tent, blood magic. And they were judged by their works according to the tree of life and the knowledge of good and evil. You're not judged according to your faith. You're judged by your works. And death, which literally means in Revelation, the fear of the danger of death and the fear of hell were cast into the lake of fire. The Bible never says that people get cast into the lake of fire. It just says the enslaving concepts of being afraid of death and afraid of hell, that gets cast into a lake of burning fire. And I remind you, the Bible says that the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Bible God. I'm here to set you free from that fear tonight. People don't get cast in the lake of fire, just the concept of fear of death and hell. That's the second death. And let me drop this bomb on you. What's the only way to have a second death? What's the only way you can have a second death? You're born, you die. How can you have a second death? There's only one way to have a second death. Have you guessed it? The one way to have a second death is to be born again. Unless you are born again, you can't have a second death. Woo! Woo! Bam! It's only scary if you're a Christian. The only way to have a second death is to be born again. Don't want to experience a second death? Don't get born again. And if you did get born again, you can undo that deal. Bingo. But whoever is not found in the bark of the tree of life and the knowledge of good and evil, which will be judged by, is thrown into the lake of fire to burn up. The Abrahamic earth empire is finished for good. It's even in their own prophecy, Matthew 3:10, The axe lies ready at the root of the trees. If you don't know where the axe is, ask Dead Wolf. He'll clue you in. The axe is laid to the root of the tree. And every tree that doesn't produce good fruit gets cast down and thrown into the fire. Fire. Bum, 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 bum. We win. And I don't think we'll even have to fight. But here's the really good news. Because Revelation 21:1 says, then I saw a new heaven. Doesn't mean new like brand new. It means renewed, refreshed, and purified. Rabbi Laitman told you they came here to take it over. They've been destroying it. But after they're gone, the earth will be renewed. It'll be refreshed. It'll be purified. And even the heavens, the skies will be renewed, refreshed, and repurified. Because their earth has been done away with. And after they did away with our original earth, we're going to pay them back. The heaven and earth of the Abrahamic matrix has passed away. And the sea was no more. I got to show you this. The sea was no more. Jeff, there won't be any sea. That's not what it says. Read it. The word in Revelation 21:1, it's not sea, it's salt. It says the salt will be no more. What the hell is that? What did Jesus say in Matthew 5:13, which is a 7? Jesus said to his followers, you are the salt of the earth. Oh, well, salt's good, Jeff. Salt is great, Jeff. It's awesome. You idiots. You idiots. Have you never even looked up what happens when you salt the earth? The salt's going to be gone. Jesus said they're the salt of the earth. They're going to be gone. Do you know what happens when you salt the earth? Salting soil is the oldest and most effective way to make land hostile to growth. The phrase salting the earth has become synonymous with rendering something barren or ruined. Have you looked around lately at our earth? They are the salt and they've ruined her. Revelation 21 says there'll be no more salt. Jesus said they're the salt of the earth. It ain't easy. It ain't hard to figure it out. They're the salt of the earth. They're the ones that have been making growth impossible. They're the ones that have made our earth barren and ruined. When you salt the earth, the plants can't absorb water. Cattle can't eat the plants. We can't eat the cattle. We die. The plants wilt from dehydration. Even if there's plenty of water, even if there's plenty of rain, the earth can't absorb the water because of the salt. It's the same reason why if you're lost at sea, you can't drink salt water because you'll die. Salt is toxic. It damages tissues. It burns leaves, prevents photosynthesis, slows and stops growth, and kills every living thing. If the plants die, we all die. I don't eat many plants. I'm a keto guy, and I'm losing weight like a Ethiopian famine victim. Do you know what the fastest animal on earth is? Oh, it's the cheetah. Nope. It's the Ethiopian chicken. That bitch got to be fast. He's gone. That chicken outrunning a cheetah. Can the soil recover? Yeah. But it takes a long damn time. I say it's time to get started. And the good news is we already have gotten started. And of course, they give us a kosher disclosure about salt. Jesus said salt was good. Salt, good. But even originally in the Bible, they said salt bad, salt's judgment, salt's desolation. And they even left you a kosher disclosure that nobody but old Jeff will show you. Deuteronomy 29:23. It's 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Oh, guess what? It's a 7. Let me do that backwards. 5 and 9 is 14, 15, 16. It's a 7. It's a 7. A land under divine judgment was described as a burning waste of salt, and that's what our earth is today after 1,000 years of Abrahamic's reign. And in Judges 9:45, 9 and 9 is 18. It's a 9. Abimelech sowed the city of Shechem with salt, symbolizing its devastation. Who's Abimelech? He was the son of Gideon, the one that all the Bibles in hotel rooms are symbolic of. And he's described in the book of Judges as a self-proclaimed king rather than a divinely appointed judge. He was illegitimate. His rule in Judges 9, there it is again, is called a cautionary tale of what happens when ambition, violence, and illegitimate leadership rules your land, and it rules all of our land and earth right now. Why is Shechem important? Because Shechem is known as the covenant crossroads. Careful places, please. A place where decisions about loyalty, leadership, blessing, and judgment are made. You are in the valley of decision tonight, my friend. Which covenant will you choose? Even the Bible says, multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision. Choose for yourself if you'll serve the Lord or will you serve the gods of your forefathers. Which one will you serve? Shechem is central to heathen identity in the Old Testament. It's the ultimate heathen city. They salted our earth. And given our interest in covenants, the millennium, and the evolution of biblical ideas, Shechem is especially noteworthy because it constantly serves as a stage where people must choose between faithfulness and apostasy. That recurring role makes it one of the Bible's most symbolically charged cities. Salt is good for you too, Super G. Be careful. You got to have some salt. I dropped so many heavy revies on you tonight. And if we date the millennium to Charlemagne, we take 2026, we take away the 1,000 years of human history added to human history. We're really living in 1026. The reign of millennial Charlemagne, Jesus type was 1,000 years. So we're already 26 years, which is an 8. It's an 8. It's an 8. We're already 26 years into the little season. And you can see we're starting to win. The millennium's not missing anymore. We've found Revelation's 1,000 years. They've already happened. We've exposed the Josephus lie. We've exposed the Testimonium Flavianum lie. We've shown that Revelation's history. We've shown you what Revelation 20 really teaches. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian whistleblower, and nobody does it better. I'm the best in the world at what I do, baby. And there you have it. There you have it. All I can say is boom, shakalaka, boom. As Elvis said, it's over. Oh, it's over. It's over. They're cooked. Bam, roasted. The Abrahamic matrix is chopped. Done. Finished. It's all over but the shouting. Phone lines are open if you want to call. Phone lines are open if you want to call. Phone lines are open if you want to call. Let me throw this up here real quick. Where is it? Where is it? I'll throw this up here real quick. Phone lines are open if you want to call. Don't have to, but if you want to call, there's the number, y'all. Don't say that Jeff doesn't open up the phones. Don't say that Jeff won't talk to anybody. But it is going to ask you to say your name. You got to say your name. So we won't, so it helps delete some of the trolls. You can't get rid of all of the trolls. But we make them at least make up a name that might distract some of them. Be polite. Be interesting. Be YouTube friendly. Man, that was good stuff. I've always been good, but I've never been as good as I am now. I got the rods. I think. I got the rods. I do got the rods. If you want to ask a rod question, it's got to be yes and no. By gospel comparison, I hope you mean, man, the fact that gospel really means the good news of heathens, and they stole that word from us. So that's the DEprogram for tonight. We'll be back on Wednesday. And let me show you. I'll take this down for a second. Let me show you what's coming up Wednesday, because it's going to be freaking awesome. It's a kind of a follow-up on this, and it's going to be super freaking unbelievable. This is coming up on Wednesday. I don't know if y'all are ready for this, but get ready. This comes up on Wednesday. The rapture of the body snatchers. Wait, do you see this? Woo! You're right, man. I get you. That comes up Wednesday. The rapture of the body snatchers. I can't wait. Thank you, Cecilia. And it's true. I do get better over the years. I'm not live on TikTok. I was afraid to go live on TikTok with this one, Jama. I got to watch those videos and get those words down. And then I'm going to, and they just sent me a thing, said you can want to go live. I don't know if I can continue to go live. But I'll keep trying until they let me. I should be over 250 right now. Let me check real quick. TikTok. I have 250 followers right now. I've been on, what, maybe a week? Maybe 2 weeks. But it is The Christian Whistleblower on TikTok. The Christian Whistleblower on TikTok. Come check me out and follow me. Wednesday is going to be Fire. It's going to be good. I'm going to show you some stuff you never seen. We're going to break it down like nobody else can break it down. Do you really want to be snatched up by this dude? I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to have to make a guy with longer hair, though. My little meme guy's getting dated. All right. Doesn't look like we got any takers for the calls. Don't look like we got any takers for the calls. That's okay. I get it. I get it. There was a Rod question. Does the Vatican have most of the destroyed? Well, let me play. This is how the rods work. I hold them steady with my thumbs. I ask the question. I take my thumbs off. They answer. So, you guys are missing out on TikTok. I'm telling you, it's a great way for us to get our message out, but I get you. Is Jeff wearing a pink jacket tonight? Nope. Is Jeff wearing a black plastic Jesus, The Truth Is Out There, available on Printful t-shirt tonight? Yes. Okay. Does the Vatican have all the destroyed heathen documents saved? No, I would agree with that because they don't want to keep that stuff around because sooner or later somebody's going to find out. Sooner or later somebody's going to find out. Well, that's another epic DEprogram. Can you imagine if I could ever get back to 100,000 subscribers? Could you imagine if I could ever get monetized? Could you imagine if I could get on some big shows? Woo, man. That'd be too easy though, wouldn't it? We don't need to do it the easy way. We got it. We got it. So, we're going to go ahead and tie a bow on this. I'm so glad we had some time together just to have a laugh and sing a song. But it seems as though we just get started. And then it's time to say so long. So long, everybody. I'm Jeffrey Dahmer, the Christian whistleblower. That takes me back to my days watching Carol Burnett with my mom. So, in case you didn't know, have you ever considered the fact that you don't have original sin? That you've got part in. Have you ever considered that you're divine, sovereign, and free? Have you ever considered getting off a bended knee? Have you ever considered that you're part of the last generation of real humans, and if you're listening to me, you are? We're winning. And this world will be better than it's ever been, sooner than even we can imagine, because we're waking up to who we are. And we got a little something coming our way. I'll be back Wednesday night. Find me on TikTok, The Christian Whistleblower. Find me on Substack, X. Like, share, subscribe if you want. Give me a thumbs down if you hate me. I get it. But I salute you for being here seeking after truth. And here's a little thing that's coming for you. Go with your gods. We'll see you on Wednesday.
Bye.